Hi, how are you?
Good, thank you. I'm Gina. It's nice to meet
Gina.
you.
I'm Tina.
Yeah. And actually,
Hey.
the person whose episode is airing this week is also Tina.
I know
So
that's the one I listened to part of it and I was like, oh, hilarious. It's
yes,
Tina.
it's
Yeah.
the month of Tinas.
Hmm.
Jen will be here in just a second, but
Okay.
just making so we might as well work out any audio stuff. I can hear you fine. You can hear me fine.
Great. Yeah, I can hear you great.
Okay, and between us, we don't have any lag, but I was talking to Jen earlier and there was a
Hmm.
lag with her, so that's always annoying, but I guess in this age we're getting we're all pretty
Yeah.
used to
And
it.
we had a giant storm here last night. So
In
I
Dallas?
everything seems to be everything seems to be working great. So I was like,
Okay. Fingers crossed.
yeah, hopefully
There
my
she
internet
is.
stays consistent. So
Yeah. Okay.
Hi.
hello.
I just explained to her that there's a little bit of a lag where you are, but we're all fine. We're all
Okay, so just tell me, Tina, how laggy is it? Can you hear me?
It's not. You're great.
Oh.
You seem it time. I
Okay.
can't really see your mouth, so it doesn't seem to be
Okay.
laggy.
There,
Okay, good.
I'm
Yeah.
like in a solarium.
There it is.
I'm in a solarium and I don't even know what a fucking solarium is. So there you go.
It's what you're in, and it's beautiful.
I know. It's like he seems very fortunate.
No,
Yeah,
I'm happy to be in a fucking solarium. But
Yeah,
okay.
man. I'm in my office with crap everywhere. I was like, how can I angle this not to see papers? Fantastic.
Honestly, all I want
It's
to
like
do
a
is talk
hoarder.
about your office. Like, I want to know what the wood cutting is behind you. I want to know what the monkey is. Like, but I wish. Well, actually, we are recording the video, so we could put this up on our YouTube. But could you tell us anything about what's in your office?
Well, the cool piece of art behind me is it's one of my good friend's husband actually. Clay Stinnett goes by Wooly Bully on Instagram.
Okay.
It's actually it's actually a piece of MDF that he goes in with all different kinds of Dremel's routers, and then he paints it. And it looks like I mean, if he had large enough scale paper, it would be like a print. But he just made it a few years ago, and I just loved it because I'm a big fan of cobras and Sacred Hearts.
So cool.
So he has really interesting, hilarious. Like if you go check him out on Instagram, I have a lot of his stuff, just because it's wackadoo or whatever, 100% wackadoo, and fantastic.
Good.
And then
Bully.
yeah, and then it's not a chimp. I can't remember what kind of primate it is, but we did a show called Trevor, back in the time. I would say, I don't know, 2017 or something like that, which I directed, and we I found this cutout and we used it on stage, but we also brought it to the office or to the lobby, and people took pictures with it.
Oh,
And
that's so cool.
I have a big thing for chimps and primates, and we got to do it behind
you
the scenes.
do?
Yeah, we got to do it behind the scenes at the zoo because one of our company members works at the zoo.
Oh, nice.
So,
Okay. Well, I want to get
yeah.
all into Kitchen Dog, but I've got to start first by saying, congratulations, Tina Parker. You survived theater school. Woohoo!
So long ago, my
So long
lord.
ago, but
yeah.
I have no doubt that, the ripple, we've learned, it doesn't matter how long ago you graduated, the feeling of survival persists and the ripple effects of it persist.
Okay,
Absolutely.
Oh, go ahead, Buzz.
Tina, I was also going to say, when I had longer hair, people used to always ask if I played Bob Odenkirk's assistant
Oh, snap.
on Better Call Saul, and I would say no, but I adore the human that plays her. So I am just, yeah, right. I would be like, yes. So anyway, I just wanted to start there because it's such a nuanced, hilarious, brilliant performance, and I love it. So there you go.
Oh, thanks so much.
It really is.
Thank you.
It really is. And I want to talk a lot about Better Call Saul, but you
Sure.
went to SMU, which
I did.
we interviewed the current dean. I think he's the dean, Blake Hackler.
Yeah, chair of acting, I think.
Chair of acting. Okay, fantastic. I'm assuming you guys weren't there. You never crossed paths with him at
Never,
school,
no.
But
We've actually,
really
he and I
great
have crossed
school.
paths quite a bit. Yeah, sorry, I was just going to say he and
Oh,
I
yeah?
have crossed paths quite a bit professionally nowadays, yes, because Kitchen
Oh,
Dog
okay.
has done a few of his new play readings because he's a playwright also. So he had at least 2 or 3 plays read at Nerdy Works Festival, and He's always helped me out when I need recommendations for young people to come in and read because, we're all old.
Oh. Fantastic. Shout out to
Yeah.
Blake. So, SMU is a fantastic school. Did you always want to go there? Did you apply to a bunch of different places? How did you pick SMU?
Well, it's kind of a ridiculous story. My senior year of high school, of course, like a lot of people went to theater school, you're all like, I'm the superstar at my high school. Like, all right, I get all the leads. I'm Auntie Mame and Mame, what ridiculous. Yes. But my dad...
I just have to say, I was Agnes Gooch, and I was the Gooch. Were you Agnes Gooch, or were you Auntie Mame?
I was Auntie Mame in the stage play version.
I was,
Yes.
yeah, me too. I was Agnes Gooch. I wanted to be Auntie Mame, but anyway, always a Gooch, never a Mame over here. But anyway, so tell us. So you were the star at your high school.
Yeah, like everybody who went to theater school, everybody was the star at their high school. But my dad unfortunately had a stroke when I was and he was my parents are super young. And so he was 40, I don't know. So it was very unusual. It happened like at the beginning of my senior year. And so my family it was all kind of chaotic. My senior year was very chaotic. And I was also like the president of the drama club and we, and all the people, did all the competitions every weekend. And so it was just there was a lot going on, and my family stuff got into disarray because my dad ended up losing his job because he was sick for so long, and it was, so I screwed up. Like, I missed a lot of applications. I didn't really, it was one of those where it just kind of snuck up on me, and I didn't really know the places I wanted to go. I had missed like certain deadlines because of the fall. And so SMU was still one of the ones that was open, and so I was able to schedule an audition because you had to get into the school, but also, get into the theater program. Like, you could get into the school and not get in the theater program, it is what it is. Luckily, I still had time to do the audition, so I did that, and then my grandmother literally walked my application through the academic part, because something I had missed, I think, and my grandmother is very like, I don't know, it's hard to say no to my grandmother. So she went and they took this great care of her, and she just kind of walked through, and she's like, told the whole situation. And I mean, I had good grades. Like, it wasn't, like I did get in, I got scholarships and all this shit. Like, I had good grades. So it wasn't like I was like, my grandmother did it, but she did walk it through.
So she's a charmer. So you got your charm from your grandma.
She's 1,000% charmer. And then as far as the audition goes, I was an hour late because I got lost. And then there's this weird horseshoe at SMU because, go ponies or whatever bullshit that is. There was no parking. And so I was super late, and I was just like so sweaty, and like, everything's high drama when you're in high school, right? So you're like, this is my last chance to be a doctor. I'm going to have to work at the, fucking shoe store that I was working at or whatever it was forever. And so
after I became an actor, I was still working at the cheese store after I went to the store. But the other thing I want to say is, like, also your grandma sounds like charming, but also like she might be in the mob at the same time.
Well, yeah, she's totally like, I mean, I don't know. She can get it done. She's the wife of a Methodist minister too, so she knows how she can read a person and figure out, like, this is what you need, And she's just sweet, like, she's a charmer. But I ran into someone else's audition. Like, that's what I ran, and then the school is all built. The school is all built crazy. So if you don't know the school, you get lost. And I was like, going in the wrong places, and I was an hour late, and I was like, yeah. And like, I literally like, this is it. And I open the door, and they're like, somebody's in there like doing the thing, and I'm like, oh my God. And they're like, and I was like, and I was just like, oh God. And so I go and sit in the room, and I just remember then coming in, I was like, I'm really sorry, like, and the kid was like, whoever, I don't think they got in, and I just remember them looking at me like, and they left. I was like, great, this is awesome. And then I go into my audition, which I chose the worst pieces, like,
of course.
Of course. Like, I think it was like, I can't even remember the name of the playwright, but it's like a really, really dramatic monologue from like Birdbath. My head is not a hammer, like something ridiculous. And then I also chose to sing, which I'm not the greatest. I mean, I can sing karaoke, but not like sing like I'm a musical theater actor. That's not me. I think I chose to sing like the nights on Broadway or some bullshit. Like, the neon lights on, on Broadway. Like, ridiculous.
Oh, yeah.
And they were like, luckily, I did good in the interview part. And then they're like, turn your monologue into stand-up comedy. Then that was good. But thank God.
I never heard of that. That's actually like
tactic. A great note. Like, if anyone listen to casting out there, if ever I walked into an audition and they were like turn this like Fargo audition into stand-up, I would nail everything. But that's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, and it was also, I think they could tell that I was so freaked out and so nervous. But then that, like, the interview portion went great, and so they're, then they were like, hey, play around with this. And then, like, the bad song that I had selected that I'd practiced with my cousin who could play guitar or something, they're like, do some dance moves with it. So I was just like, I don't dance, but I started doing these ridiculous things, and they're like, yeah, good. They laughed, and, I think it also let me relax. Exactly.
Wait, you guys, should we have a documentary series about people who are auditioning for theater school? Because honestly, like, the stakes are so high for so many people. I bet there's 1 billion stories. I mean, some of which we've heard on the podcast.
I think we do. And I just remembered that in my monologue was from the play about the woman who traps the rapist in her house and puts him in a fireplace.
The burning bed or whatever, not the burning bed, but
and it's William Master Simone.
Yes.
And she has a fire poker and she's poking the rapist. And I am 16 at the time, and a virgin. Not that really matters, but like the whole thing is not good. And why did I do that? But yet I got into. They must have been like, it would have been. I mean, I know this is terrible to say, but what if they told me to turn that into stand up? Like that would be dark humor.
Well, that's what this piece was, the same thing. It was so dark, and so like this person is mentally ill, and she's like, "My head is not a hammer. Don't hit me, man." And you're just like, "What?"
But I mean, okay, so you clearly, like, what I love is that SMU like knew how to take a teenager's anxiety and like shift it, and so good on them, those auditioners, like good on them. So you did that. Did you walk out of there feeling like, okay, like it started off really wonky, like me being late, but like I have a chance? Or did they tell you? When did they tell you?
I felt good, like after I left, I was like, okay, like I wasn't sure, like, because I was like, it was weird that they told me to change it to comedy, but I think it was good, and like I felt like the interview part went good, and they were, at the time, my class, this was the first year that they eliminated the cuts program. So what happened is they had the BFA acting track, and then they had, what was proposed anyways, because they changed what our degree was, but it was supposed to be BA in theater studies, and so if you were interested in directing, playwriting, whatever, stage management, tech, whatever, and then acting, you could also have, so you kind of chose focuses, but that was it, and it had a little more academic focus. And so, because before me, the classes, everybody went in as an actor, you did first 2 years, and then they kind of just cut you, basically, and we're like, you're in this free fall of like a program that wasn't really planned.
Yeah, I mean, like that's how our school was too, and like half the people didn't end up graduating, and it was a racket, and now they don't do it anymore. But that was
they
a
stopped
huge.
My year.
Okay, so was it that the people that maybe weren't getting into the acting program went to theater studies? Is that how it was proposed?
I think that's what they were trying to do. I think they were also trying to figure out or they were trying. Some people left. I think they were also trying to keep their numbers up, and I think they also had people who were like, "Hey, I'm an actor, but I'm also a director. Why can't you get me some classes here? Like I want to have the class. If you're going to cut me, that's fine. But like, I'm interested in these things too. Can there be a program?" And so they kind of were building that program. Like they had it out there, and that when they took our class, we had very set paths of like, and we had the same 2 years together as a group, freshman and sophomore year. And then we split into our kind of disciplines. And they kind of still, like when we were juniors, kind of like, here's some things, and we're like, okay, but our class was kind of a hard ass, and we're like, where's this class, where's that? So we were always in the office saying, no, this like afterthought of a class, this shit doesn't fly. And I'm going to direct a main stage, or I want to direct a studio, and they're like, no, this is how it's going to work, or whatever. So like, yeah, me and Tim, who actually is one of my coworkers at Kitchen Dog, and then a couple other folks were. I think we turned the chair at the time's hair white because we would go in there and be like, no, this isn't going to work.
You just made me realize that all the schools who had cut programs who didn't have another track to go into after were missing out on such a revenue stream, right? Like at our school, and all the people who got cut like went to this other college, and I'm thinking, when was the meeting where somebody goes, oh my God, you guys, we should just have something here for them to do instead of sending them to another school. That's
well, and I think too they find like that there's kids that truly have talent for like a playwright or director, but then they're also really good actors, which I think it's really good for people who are like, I'm primarily like, I'm a mix. Tim, I would say, who my coworker is primarily a director, but it's great for both of us to go through acting. Like that's
what I'm noticing is like there's no, like our school had no foresight into anything, so it was like they didn't. So that's a problem in a university.
It's a huge problem. Yeah.
Right, and so at your school, what was your experience like on stage? Were you the star? Were you? And then and then my other follow-up question is. Question is, you're launching into the professional world. What did your school do or not do to prepare you? And what was your departure like into, like, okay, now you're 22, live your life, bye.
I would say I was kind of a mix. Like I had a lot of opportunities while I was there, and some self-created as far as directing opportunities. And we had an interesting system of like, there was a studio theater, and we were able to we had this studio system, which a lot of non-majors would come and see plays because they were required, blah, blah, blah. So we got to direct a lot, and Tim really fought, and he got to direct a main stage, and I was my senior year, I was a lead in a play, like just all sorts of things. Like I had a lot of great opportunities at SMU. I think I had some good teachers and directors while I was there. So when I was a junior, they had DeShields in to as a guest artist, which really stirred the pot because he was not about like, let's talk about your objectives. Let's really do some table work. Like he was like, why aren't you funny? I don't get that shit. Like go out. Why aren't you funny like this? Or come up with some dancing or whatever, He was awesome. Like I loved it. Like, because we were doing Funny Thing Happened on the way to the Forum. I was one of the, concubines or whatever, the dancing. I was Tintinabula, supposed to be a bell ringer, like sexy dancer. And he said I reminded him of some lady he lived with in Amsterdam. So instead I was a clogger and had bells and had giant hair that went out to here. And so he was like, he was great. But it really gave you the experience. It makes a lot of people crazy because he was like not interested in their process. What he was interested in was like results and like hitting your marks and and he had sent me away and he's like, come up with 16 beats to that end. I want to see something funny. And so I came back in and did it, and he was like, yes, it was awesome. Like he really was a real collaborator. But anyway,
that's fantastic. And actually, I'm so glad you told that story because, I want you to get back to launching and everything. But the thing about the DeShields story that you just told, I can see why you like that because that seems like you, a person who has the training and the gravitas and whatever to like take their craft very seriously. But at the end of the day, you're there to entertain and get the job done, right? Like you're not so precious about your own self.
No, and I mean it was so important. I think just because, like everywhere you go, like you don't always work at the same place, and everybody's process and everybody's way of rehearsal or whatever is wildly different. And so I thought it was great because you're not going to go always walk into someplace where they're going to coddle you or take the time or whatever. The
other thing is that like what just hit me is that we've interviewed a ton of people, and I'm trying to like think about like what does a conservatory do wrong is I think they forget that it's about entertainment. Like there becomes such a focus on process and inner work. What about the fucking entertainment value of like entertaining the audience? Like that goes out the window, which is why the shit is not funny most of the time because it's like so serious. You're like, no, this is a fucking farce. Like make people laugh. And it's like I love that you remind me of it like an entertainer, and I feel like I need an entertainment conservatory, not acting conservatory.
Well, I will say that I mean, like, I still use a lot of the training that I used at SMU, like at Kitchen Dog. I mean, this was founded by SMU grads, so you know, a lot of the doing table work and talking about what you want and all that kind of stuff like that is definitely part of what we do. But what was cool about Andre, and I love Andre DeShields with all my heart, like, was that you found a way to make your process work in his framework, and he got results. Like our show was funny as hell. Like the singing was great, the dancing was great, and it looked great because the Eckharts did the costumes and all the sets, and it felt like we were in a professional show. Like it was exciting and fun to do. So I thought it was a great way to kind of get ready for what it was going to be like, because I remember auditioning for the show and he was like, where's your headshot? And we're like, nobody told us. And he's like, this is an audition, why don't you have, I don't understand why you don't have a headshot. And you're just like, oh god, like, and it was embarrassing, you know. And then he was like, all right, I want to do that. He was doing some improv-y things in the thing, and people couldn't get, like, people were like and he's like, just jump in, man. And he was like, fantastic. And you know, you get a call back and you're like, okay, I see how this works. So that was great. And we also had a lady named Eve Roberts, same thing. She was pretty brutal too, in that, you know, if you weren't ready to go, she wasn't going to baby you. So she would just basically like, so you don't know your lines? Sit the fuck down. Sit down. Yeah. Who's ready to work? Because it was an audition class, and she was a film actor with a lot of experience, and it was auditions for both film and stage. But if you weren't ready, but if you were ready, she would work you out. Like, you would get a great workout, you'd leave with a great monologue. And so I was like, always be prepared for that, you know, like that, because she will get you if you're not.
Honestly, it really sounds like SMU did a much better job than most of what we hear about in terms of like getting real working actors, and it's a tough thing. I don't really blame any school that does it. It's a tough thing. If it's a working actor, then they're working and they don't have time to like commit to the school teaching schedule. But at the same time, like, if you don't have any of that, then you're experiencing all that on the job, which is fine too. But it sounds like SMU did a better job of preparing you for a career.
I would say somewhat, yeah. I mean, there are things that I, as I entered life, because I was of the mind when I graduated, I was really torn about whether or not to go to grad school or not, and I really didn't know, because I still to this day have a split focus. Like, I act and direct, both in the theater. Like, I do both. So I wasn't sure which way I wanted to go, and you really had to decide to go to grad school. So I was like, I'm going to take a year off. Is what I decided. And I waited tables, lived life, whatever. Didn't even really do any theater or stuff. But I tended to like work back at SMU. So like they would have me come back, and like I would sub in and cover like Del Moffitt, who was the man who was the auditioner who auditioned me originally, and his improv class. Like, I'd come in and do cover him for a month if he went on sabbatical, stuff like that. Or like I directed a couple main stages there. That was it. So I just decided, I started working more in Dallas, and ended up just staying in Dallas. Dallas was not where I planned to stay. Like, I kept in my mind, thinking like, I'm going to move to Chicago. Like, that was my dream, was living in Chicago. And because I guess I'm a Taurus and stubborn and lazy, I don't know. Sometimes you just start working and you're like, nah, I'll just stay here. I'm working and I can kind of do what I want. And then I got an agent, and I was like, oh, there's this part of it, like I think in 95 or whatever, because I graduated in 91. So you just start working, and then it's like, wow, do I want to go and start over? And it was just kind of a hard thing to do. Do I have regrets sometimes about not doing it? Absolutely. Like, sometimes I look back and I'm like, oh man. But as far as just preparing, I think it's just hard to get prepared, because I think, like, I wish I left with, like, and they're doing this now, which is great, but, like, left with more of, like, what's, what's a good headshot? What how do you, walking into a room, how do you handle it? Like there's certain things that I feel like they could train and give you a little bit more life experience in it. But I think they have some new. I know they have film acting now, a little bit of film acting stuff there, which is always good, just because that's how a lot of people make money.
I'm happy to say, because we've had this conversation so many times with people about the way that schools didn't prepare you. Somebody's been getting the message about this. My son is in high school, and he goes to this like auxiliary performing arts program. It's like half day his regular high school and half day this, and he does a seminar once a week on the business of music, and what kind of jobs you're going to have to do to keep to pay the rent while you're waiting between gigs. Like, is very brass tacks. So the message has gotten through, thankfully.
Yeah. The business is important, man. That's how you survive. I mean, let's be real. I mean, like, and it's not easy. Like, if you're going to, I mean, there's 2 or 3 unicorns every so often, but for the most part, you're going to have to wait tables or cobble together a bunch of odd jobs, or like all these little, like, I'm going to do the Aesop's fables in the elementary schools for 3 weeks or whatever, like, and how do you make rent? Like, it's not glamorous for sure.
So what was the journey from graduating to founding Kitchen Dog with your classmate?
I actually am not a founder. So Kitchen Dog was founded by 5 SMU MFA students who were in the MFA program when I was an undergrad. So I ain't that old, thank God. But they founded it in 90. Did their first show in 91, which I saw. It was above a pawn shop in Deep Ellum with no air conditioner in May. It was very hot and fantastic. Irene Fornes' mud. It was great. And so I did my first show with them in 93, so a few years after I graduated, which Tim, my classmate, directed. He had come back. He was in Minnesota at the time. And then I've just worked with Kitchen Dog ever since. So I became a company member in 96, started working for the company as like an admin producer type person in 99, and then became co-artistic director when the founding AD left in 2005. So I've been here forever.
What?
I do not have children. I say that Kitchen Dog is my grown, mean child.
You're grown, mean? Did you say mean?
Yeah, I did say mean sometimes. Yeah, sometimes it's very, temperamental.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, it's probably still better than kids. I'm just saying. Anyway, so I don't have any. So, okay. So, this is what I always want to ask people who have long-standing careers in theater, and especially when they are co-artistic director or artistic director. Why do you do it, and why do you love it?
That's a really good question. I mean, it varies from time to time. I mean, I think that Kitchen Dog has, one of its tenets has always been about asking, we do, I hate the word edgy, but we do edgier plays. We do plays that are very much talking about the world around us, challenging, and we're in Texas. It's, sort of purple state now, kind of exciting. Purple parts, at least Dallas is. Hopefully this election goes that way. So, I feel like our place in the Dallas zeitgeist is important because, we're not doing, there are a lot of people that do traditional plays and do them well, like straight ahead, musicals or, The Odd Couple or whatever. Notice this gesture, The Odd Couple. And do them great. But we do newer plays. We're a founding member of the National New Play Network. And so that's kind of kept it relevant and kept it exciting, the work exciting to me. I love working with new plays and new ideas. And we have a company of artists, some of which went to SMU. And I think I've stayed here this long because, I feel like I am able to do the kind of work I want to do. I'm able to choose the plays I want to be in or direct. And I feel like they're important for my community. And when that becomes that it's not that, then I need to leave or step down. Is my feeling. I mean, I don't know.
So many people say that they keep their allegiances to theater companies because it's often the work that they really feel moves them, is very,
Yeah.
is very inspiring. But then you also got the opportunity to do a very good part in something that was commercial, which is Breaking Bad. So could you tell us anything about how you were born into that project?
Sure. I I got an agent. I had no experience, no resume. So you did the couple of walk on, like I'm in the back of a bank commercial, fantastic, or whatever, $50. I love it. Um, did that and lucked into Robert Altman came to town and did a very terrible movie called Dr. T and the Women, but it was a fantastic experience. And I was one of the nurses and I was on set every day, pretty much. So he told us, he's like, I'll make you a lot of money. You're not going to be seen a lot. You'll be here every day. And we got out by 5 and I was able to do plays at night. Like it was chef's kiss, the best. Because you just kind of learned from the master. Like he truly was a master. God rest his soul. Anyway, so I started auditioning more, did some walkers because everybody did walker back in the time, Walker Texas Ranger.
It's like the ER. We all did the ER in the early edition in Chicago. That was so Walker, same thing. I love a good Walker, by the way, Texas Ranger.
So ridiculous. Yeah, I think one of my lines in one of the episodes I was in was like, stabs, like it was so country. Anyway, it was terrible. But so with the Breaking Bad thing, I read the sides. It actually was the person who was casting locals or whatever, not locals, because it was shooting in New Mexico, but it was a woman named Tony Cobb Brock who was casting in Dallas. And so we got the sides. I got the call to come in and audition for it. I read it and I was like, and this is a story I've told a lot, but it's the truth, which is I read it and I was like, it's going to be a blonde, big boobs woman. Like that's what I thought when I read it. I was like, it's going to be this is what it's going to be, because there were a lot of jokes about boobs and you're killing me with that booty. Like there was a lot more to that scene, my first scene. There was a lot more. So I was like, whatever. I was like, it's not, I'm a plus size lady. I have brown hair. I have a, deep voice. Like, oh, well. So I was like, what do I feel good in? So I remember I wore this Betsy Johnson dress because I was kind of into rockabilly swing at the time. This Betsy Johnson little dress with apples. It was real sexy. And this little shrug and had my hair kind of fancy. And I was like, I'm wearing this. I don't give a shit. So I was like, I feel good in this. Who cares? So I walked in and there were a bunch of ladies that were blonde and had professional lady outfits on. And I was like, oh shit, I should have dressed like a secretary. Why did I dress like this? Oh, damn. And I was like, okay, well, whatever. You're not going to book this, so who cares? Went in. I had a great audition, made Tony laugh. And, it was what it was. And so I went away and I didn't hear anything for a while. So I was like, I didn't book that. Oh, well. And I was sitting in an audition for some commercial, and I never book commercials. I just don't, because I look one way and then my voice comes out and they're like, no, you can't play the young mom because you seem like Janine Garofalo or something. So your bite and smile is scary, ma'am. So I was waiting in the waiting room, and my agent calls, or I got paged, or because it was so long ago. And she was like, "Can you be on a plane in 3 hours?" And luckily, I wasn't doing a play at the time. And I said, "Yeah, I can." And she's like, "Well, you booked it. You should go, and so you should go home and pack and go to Southwest Airlines." And that was the story. And so I get there and, whatever, found out that, it's Bob Odenkirk and start losing my mind and all this stuff. But what's crazy is, it's a crazy story. And then when in season 4 finale of Breaking Bad, spoiler alert if you haven't watched it, but at the end.
You're late. If you haven't watched it, that's on you.
Please watch it because Mama needs to keep getting residuals.
Residuals, yeah.
But that final episode where I have a great scene with Bryan Cranston, there was a insider podcast, which I wasn't aware of, but they talked to Vince about, who's she and how did you cast her? Because this is my first actual scene, where I have more than 2 lines. And he tells the story of I just love this story, which is basically he'd seen a lot of people that he didn't think was right. He wanted something, they kept showing him the same type. And he was like, no, it needs to be something different. He's a different kind of guy. I wanted somebody who'd challenge him, different looking. And the casting woman who had, Kira, I can't remember her last name, but she had, I'd auditioned for her a few times, but I don't know that I'd necessarily booked anything. And she's like, well, there is this one girl, I think she's great. She's probably not right. Physically, I don't think she's right. But do you want to see? And so he showed her, and he was like, that's exactly what I want. And then I booked it.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
And so it's crazy. So you just never know.
Okay.
I mean, I think that's the walk away.
This is the craziest thing. This is crazy. So I booked a show in New Mexico called Perpetual Grace. Kira cast it. And Kira showed me to Steve Conrad, who's the showrunner, and James Whitaker, who was directing the episode. I looked nothing like the other people. My agent, Casey, called me and said, can you get on a plane in 3 hours? You're going to New Mexico. Same casting director. We might be the same person. But anyway.
Kira. Kira.
Kira
people against type. Yeah.
So anyway, it's so crazy. Crazy.
I love it. Well, and it's like that thing, like I think that's always the big takeaway, right? Is and I think I read this, not to, I feel like I'm fucking name dropping, I'm not, but like I read this, I think in Brian's book too, but like the thing is like all you can do is just they're calling you in for a reason, so you just have to say like, what is it in me? What's unique about me that's this role? And then lean into it and go for it in that regard, because that's all you got. Like as soon as you start, and I find myself doing this, I have to keep reminding myself, to do this, which is I'll read something like, oh, it's this, and try to play to what I think it is, versus like, no, what is it in me that's this? And that's the thing. I book when I do that. When I try to do the other thing,
Totally. Yeah.
You start getting in your own head. God.
By the way, regarding name dropping, I never understand why anybody gets upset about that. It's like, well, they're people that you know, the people that you work with, they're people in your life. I mean, you're just saying their names. It's not like you're clout chasing. Anyway, that's inside. Girl, walk me back to this day where you take 3 hours to get on the airplane. I want to know, how fast did you have to rush home to pack? What did you do? Did you have enough stuff? What was it like when you were on the airplane? Did you order a drink because you felt so fancy? Tell us everything.
Well, all I know is I had a bag, and I ran home. I had a roommate at the time, thank God, and I just said, can you feed my cat? Because I had a cat at the time. I was like, please feed Loretta. And so I got this bag and just it was really like just stuff thrown in. And I was like, do I need to bring the dress and shoes that I wore? So I brought the whole outfit, because I was like, because some of the jobs I'd been on, I had to bring my own shit or whatever, You have to bring your whole wardrobe and be like, oh, you want none of this? Great, I'll put it all back in my car. So I just threw that in there, and then I just threw some random, I don't even know what I packed. And, ran to the airport, got on the plane. I think I did have a Jack and Coke, because I was just like, I'm so freaked out in the plane. Of course, you're going to New Mexico, so you're going over those mountains, and you're just like, okay, I'm going to die. Also, great, but I don't want to die. I just booked a big job or whatever. And then I remember the landing and getting in the van thing, and they took me straight to the hotel. And I remember opening, because back then, you would get like your sides in an envelope, like that in the later years. That shit you never got printed stuff ever, because people would steal it and whatever else. So I remember pulling it out and seeing Bob's name and freaking out, because I was a huge Mr. Show fan, and I was just like, oh my God. And I just remember calling I have a friend, Aaron Ginsberg, who's kind of an LA Hollywood dude or whatever, and I was like, oh my God, and he's like, thanks for the spoiler, and I was like, oh shit, I'm not supposed to tell people, and I was like, but I'm freaking out, and he's like, no, it's okay, I will tell no one. I was like, don't tell anyone, I don't want to get fired. But yeah, so I just remember sitting there and freaking out and trying to look at my lines and, what am I, oh God, and then going there with my little bag of dresses or whatever, and they're like, we don't want any of this crap or whatever.
They're like, this is a high budget show. We got costumes covered,
well,
and we're going to feed you.
I know, back then I don't know if they were that high budget, but it was interesting to me. The one thing is just how involved the showrunners of that show, Peter and Vince at the time, and then later Peter and Vince, but like they have a color palette. They have where they want the characters to go. Like, I had, that it got really pared down. I ended up having, like, just a few lines. But they took so many pictures, different outfits, different setups, and, like, different color tones. Like, just setting what they wanted for my character. And I was like, holy shit, or whatever. And everybody was so nice and friendly. And
I mean,
remember your name.
it's
So good.
really interesting to hear, and I'm glad you talked about it. I'm in the rainstorm, so sorry, but like,
It's all good.
it's so weird to be. I'm in the Midwest right now, and I live in LA. So coming back here, I'm like, what is that noise? It's fucking fucked up, and it's the fucking rain. Anyway, so what is so beautiful about this story to me is that even if we feel small, right? Like, whatever, these people who are creating these iconic shows have such vision. There is literally no small character. Like, these are their children, and they have arcs. So it just makes me appreciate, as creators, as artists, how much time, love, energy goes into characters and storylines, and then we see maybe if we're lucky 1/8 of it, but just know, like, the shit matters, right? Like, it matters
1,000%. And that's the same thing with it's the same thing with Robert Altman. I mean, like, we were, I got to be part of one of those his signature long tracking shots, right? He would walk in the room and be like, okay, what's going on in here? So what are you guys doing? What's happening? And I was like, well, we're this, that, and he's like, great, keep that. And when I come across, I want you to be in this moment. So like, he's like, Tina, are things like where he's following on my shoulder and Tina, I need you to do this, and this is what's happening. And I'm just going to think about some lines, just throw these out. It was just, I don't know. And that's the same thing with Vince and with Peter. Like, they were really like, what is she wearing? Why is she wearing this? Where are you? Like, what's going on? And they were like, the scripts were so good. It was like, you had to be letter perfect. But was like, oh, it's a lot of improv. And I'm like, not really.
No, but it sounds like theater. The attention to detail and the sort of like the vision and the way that, and that just comes through in the best series, the auteurs. That
and they all love theater.
Right.
They all love theater. Right. They all do.
So a bit ago you said something about how the like lustiness that Saul, Jimmy feels for Francesca didn't, necessarily, a lot of that didn't necessarily make it into at least your first episode, but it got revisited in Better Call Saul, and I really appreciated that because I was like, oh yeah, I would have wanted to see more of that. I wanted to see more of that like lusty dynamic. But
it's funny because I was just going to say, it's funny because, like, actually in Breaking Bad, he would say all sorts of, like, rude, like, honey tits and you're killing me with that booty is our first scene. And I remember later when we were in Better Call Saul, he was like, this guy would say these things. And so they had to figure out the segue because it's like, well, you go there, buddy. Like, we've already shot all that stuff.
Yeah.
So we had to figure out how to get there.
Right. That's funny.
Yeah.
So you have an opportunity that not a lot of actors get to have, which is to revisit a character. And, sometimes people say, oh, if I had to go back and do it all over again, after I watch my performance, I might have done this or that. Did you have anything like that? Because you got a lot more screen time in Better Call Saul, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Was there anything that you were super excited to bring into the next iteration of your character?
I'll just say this. Like, I think because of the scripts were so good. What was really fun for me was getting to play before she turned, like before she got I was just say before she got vampire bit by Greed and Saul. She was so sweet, and like just how they explored that in the beginning, like that for the first season I was back, I got to do 8 episodes, which was rad, and I was just really so sweet, and it was all in the scripts. And like then you go to the costume, go to your fittings, and it's like I'm in pinks and flowers, and like one of the shirts, like Vince is like, I love this shirt because it has birds, and I'm like, how do you like like it's just crazy that you're looking and you see that my shirt has birds or whatever, and you picked it because it has birds on it. So that was what was super fun for me, is just finding the beginning of it, and then because I was off a couple seasons, like then finding the one time I came back was like, oh, we're closing the office, like, how do you get from that to this? And luckily the writing helped a ton, but then just making that segue of, what would have to happen to get there.
The best is in Better Call Saul is when you see her decorating the office, and it's so at first, and it's so beautiful and refined and elegant, and then in your mind you're going, but this is not what the office looks like, right? And to see that journey was so satisfying for a
Yeah.
fan, you know, so
We were
satisfied to
just
see how we got there.
I just remember joking with Ray because we all came in and were like, wow, because like in life it was just so like, look at all these lavenders and all these patterns and I was like, yeah, I was like, girl, it's like she got all of her Tuesday morning and Bed Bath and Beyond coupons and went to town. Like she says, I need this many dollars, and then she just got all the water, like got everything she could get for that. Called her cousin in to do some woodwork or whatever, and it's just because I think that's the thing, and that's why she became what she became. Because this job became her life, and she
Yeah.
always on call,
Would
always
you-
on call.
Right.
Would you
yeah.
say that? Oh, go ahead, boss.
No, I was just gonna say, like, it really, her journey, I think, is so relatable, and it's relatable and also super makes for me a commentary. Like, I was an assistant to a movie star, so like, I know the turn that I took when I did that from being like super Midwestern and like, oh my God, we're like gonna make good movies to, oh my God, I'm literally probably doing something illegal for my boss right now, and I sort of don't give a fuck. And it's just very relatable in a human being to see someone be, like you said, like bitten by the greed bug, but also like the things. And I think this is what the series does too. The lengths to which we go to get what we want at all costs, and the shit is not black and white. Like. No. I love it. So I'm really appreciative of your character's journey and the writing on that show, and it just makes my heart sing to know that like the details are thought about and people give a shit when they're making art still. Thank God.
Oh yeah. 1,000%. And that's the thing too with that cast, like with Brian and Aaron and those guys at Breaking Bad, but then also like, with Ray and Bob and Giancarlo and those guys, like they're all like, can we run lines? Can we talk? Let's talk about what we want. What's going on? What are other possibilities? And really just present. Like that was the thing is like, I've worked, a few, I'm that guy that like, if I'm lucky, like right now I'm kind of having a dress bill. But like, you get to job in and you're there for a day or you're there for 2 days or whatever. And it's not always, like it's not like, oh, it's great. Like you just go in, you do your thing and you split or whatever. But the thing with these guys is like they really are about the story and about what's happening and about making the best thing, and that's true and it starts from them down. So like even like the person who's like your PA, at the dressing rooms, like they're into it and they're like, hey, I saw you do this, like it's awesome. Like it's just an awesome.
Yeah.
It was a really great experience. Both shows.
It makes everybody invested, right? Like when the quality is really high and people at the top and the bottom are taking it very seriously, it gives everybody, it projects the message to everybody like, oh no, we're taking this very seriously. This is not just a job for us. Like this is actually what we got into this industry for, most of us, to create something meaningful.
What I hear also is like the spirit of fucking collaboration. For God's
1,000%.
sake, like when I walk on set now, if there is not a spirit of collaboration, I'm like, oh no, I'm gonna go work at the AM/PM because at least there, and I've done many of those jobs where it's like there is like forced collaboration in those settings. Mm-hmm. So like on sets now, and I'm like a total under 10 day player situation, but like you can tell, and you can tell though when people fucking care. So I now when I walk on a set, you get the vibe of like, oh, this is like a Dick Wolf thing where nobody cares about the day players, or oh shit, there's a spirit of collaboration here. How can I participate even as an under 10 and still get and feel good about it? And I think as I get older, those are the sets I want to be a part of. I mean, or else I'm going to do another job. Like, I don't know. But my question is also, are you sad it's over? How do you feel about... Okay.
Oh, yeah. I mean, for sure. I mean, it was, it's one of those things you finish and you're like, oh, crap, we're done. And I didn't take very many pictures. And, oh, I didn't get to see this person on my last day. Or, I don't know. Yeah, I'm sad it's over. It's one of those things that... plus it was great. It was great to have that, knowing that it could always come back. And like, make you make your SAG insurance minimum, right?
There you go.
You
Yeah.
know, like now you're kind of like, what's your next gig?
Well,
I don't
that
know.
leads. Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead.
No,
I
it's
always think about that when people are on amazing shows. Like, it's such a, it's like bittersweet because there's this thought of like, oh man, what I might never be in anything like this again. As great as it was, as you know, for as long as it lasted, residuals, whatever. But like, it's what we all get into it for. It's like a magical feeling. It's a feeling of that we're like connecting and vibing and sharing something very human and personal, but in a heightened, beautiful way. That's interesting to look at.
That's
And
1,000%.
And the other thing in the interest of time, I want to ask you, like, so you're in a dry spell. That's not going to last. That's fucking life, all that bullshit. But, like, what do you want to do? Like, what's happening with your theater company? What's happening with, like, I mean, we're around the same age, so it's like, what do you, I'm, like, obsessed with this idea of, like, and maybe people don't give a shit about this, but I do, about, like, legacy. Like, what do you want to do? What's happening?
Well, actually, this week I've been directing a play, so this week is Tech Week for me. So it's, that's probably I'm kind of like, so we have Tech this weekend. We're doing the regional premiere of The Sound Inside by Adam Rapp, which is a beautiful little play, two-hander, and working with another classmate of mine who is part of our company. We have a company of actors, directors, playwrights at Kitchen Dog. Not all SMU people, but a assorted mix of folks. But she happens to be an SMU person. And that play has a younger guy in it who's about to graduate from UNT, University of North Texas. And what's great is being around that youth too. So you're kind of like, wow, I remember what it's like to be 22 and about to graduate and thinking I'm gonna, move to California with my girlfriend and do whatever. Like that's kind of wild and fantastic or whatever. So for me, in our theaters, we bought a building in 2016. Yeah, crazy. We bought a building in 2016. We had enough money to buy it, but not enough money to renovate it. And of course, we started capital campaign, then COVID came, of course. And so then we ended up, with the money we had raised, just paying off the loan we had taken off a bridge loan to get the building. So we paid it off. So we own this building outright. Now it looks like we have enough to start renovations, at least in our minds. We think we do. We're hiring general contractors right now. So that's the big thing that's about to happen is that, we're going to start renovating this building, this 10,000 square foot warehouse, which is good and it's scary too, I think because as most theater people will say, the audience, theater's back, but the audiences aren't. I think a lot of people found other shit to do during the pandemic, and all of the press dried up. So now it's trying to, lure the people who were coming back, and being like, come on, you want to get off your couch. I promise you'll like it or whatever. But then, where do you get the new folks? And so the idea of opening a building is a little scary because you're like, is it, if we build it, you will come? I hope so. I don't know. But that's one of the things, because I've been with Kitchen Dog for so long, like, I do want, that is part of my legacy, if you want to say that. I feel like I've made some good plays, both as an actor, as a director, as an artistic director. I feel like we've done some really quality work. I feel like we've fostered a lot of talent, and a lot of talent that's went on to bigger things in other communities, because that's the other thing, and we're in Dallas, so keeping talent here sometimes is hard, but I do feel like some of the talent that we've had and we've fostered on our stages, whether it's playwrights or actors, like a lot of people have went on to success, so that's great. As far as a film person, I don't know, I just, who wouldn't want to be on a show and have a regular gig? I don't know, who wouldn't want to be in a cool movie with the Coen brothers or, something, or be in a really great indie film? I don't know. At this point, I'm like, I just want to work. So
you just want to work. You just want to act. You just want to
because you get
doing it.
Yeah, just because I don't know if this is y'all's experience, but I always feel like I start to get rusty and also start to get a little out of joint, because when you're in the groove and you're working and then you're auditioning, there's a confidence, there's there's a way you approach the audition that you're like, yeah, this, that. And then when you haven't booked in a little bit and you've done a few auditions and you're like, oh, then you start doing that weird thing of like, what do they want? And that's when you
Right.
start fucking yourself.
Well,
basically.
people always, speaking of Bryan Cranston, like people always talk about the Bryan Cranston speech where he talks about, the auditioning is the job, then you throw the script away.
Yeah.
And that's great. However, it's a lot easier to do when you're always auditioning. So when it's like people, and when you're like, I'll be honest, like I'm a Latina plus size lady at 47, and like he's a white dude who's already now famous. So it's much easier said than done, and I just call it like it is. But he's right in that you cannot make the outcome the thing, right? However,
No,
it's
'cause you'll
great.
go crazy.
You'll lose your mind and be a bad actor. It's bad all around. It'll lead to depression, and you'll need medication and all those things. So, but what I do love is the idea of like not staying rusty. So for me, what that means is finding outlets, whether it's acting or writing or a class or whatever. So do you find that your work with Kitchen Dog like helps you stay like not get out of joint? Is that one of the reasons that you don't just say fuck it, I'm gonna do full time? Because you could say like, look, dude, I just came off Breaking Bad. Fuck this shit. I'm gonna just focus on that. But does the Kitchen Dog must serve a different purpose as well, right? Like staying.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Like, the thing is I still really love the theater. I still really love it. Like, I do love film. I do love that medium, and I love that, it makes it pays a lot more than the theater, unfortunately. But I love theater. I love love that connection to the audience, being in the room with, and hearing just the liveness of it, and the fact that it could change at any moment. You can never have that in film. And so I think it's a good balance for me, because and that's one of the reasons I haven't left Dallas, is because I still really love the theater. I have thought about it for sure. Like I've thought about like, if I'm going to do it, is this the time to do it, to try it? And then it's like, oh, well, like that thing of like, do you want to look back and have regrets or whatever? And I'm like, I just don't know, like maybe it's the same thing of like, I'm Taurus and I'm stubborn and I'm going to stay stuck down here or whatever. But I don't know.
The thing you're describing.
I thought about it more the past few years, like, is this the time to go? And
but here's my other thing is like, maybe the thing that keeps you working is actually doing both. Like, so like maybe the juice is, and the gold is, you might not have one without the other is what I'm thinking, but it doesn't mean that you can't do more. But anyway, I think there's some magic alchemy that is literally happening because of Kitchen Dog leading to film and TV.
I would say absolutely. And I think there's definitely things like we've talked about with whether it's theater school or theater, whatever it is, like I feel like there's some in the training that makes it, when you get the script, that you're able to quickly break it down and come up with like, here's a backstory or here's this, and that kind of is, I feel like I have some tools that I can use that, maybe somebody who doesn't have the training, but I don't know.
Yeah. There were 1 million questions that I did not get a chance to ask you before we ran out of time. So maybe someday you'll come back and do a part 2. But I could talk to you for hours. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, man.
You know what? You're giving me hope for theater and for film, and also it's just really important for people, I think, myself, if no one else, to hear that like all the shit is important creatively that we do, and I don't think a lot of us theater people would have the life we have if we didn't commit to the theater a long time ago and stay with it.
I think that's right. Absolutely. Yeah, and not lose your mind on those self-tapes, because it's real easy to do. I've been going down that rabbit hole of like, this tape was good.
Don't do it.
This tape was good. I don't understand why.
Although not for nothing about rejection, like I yes, it's important to have a healthy relationship with it, whatever. But at the same time, it's like saying, it's what I think sometimes people who aren't actors don't realize about it is telling us to get over it or move on is like saying, oh yeah, it's your favorite thing in the world to do. It's absolutely the best you ever feel in life. There's no better sensation than being on a great project. But when you don't get it, just don't think about it.
Garbage.
It's like easier said than done.
Yeah.
Their loss.
Thank
Yeah,
you,
easier said than done.
Thank you, Tina.
Bye, you guys. Thanks so much.